cloud. And it probably just yelled at you that we are recording. Um, so hi, welcome to CREPCON. CREPCON has been a small but mighty virtual conference for our students to showcase their work. I think we have at least a couple with students with us so far now, and a few of our CREP fellows. Thank you so much for being here. And we are recording this to be able to share it in the future. CREP is a collaborative replications and education project, and I think if you're here, you know what that is. And this is kind of a place for us to celebrate the work we've done, to talk through the importance of replication as an educational tool. And so I'm really excited to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Adetula. I first met Ade. Can I call you Ade? Is that okay? Okay. I first met Ade probably 4 years ago, virtually, when he began working on the CREPE Africa project. In the at the core lab at the University of Grenoble. And he's just done tremendous work. He's taken the CREPE model and he's used very minimal resources from us and adapted it in order to be able to bring the tools of open science and the processes of big team open science to the African continent. And he does just really excellent work. And so I invited him to come and talk about that project and to talk about its impact and what he did. And what I really, really like about this project is that it shows one of the ways people can take things and adapt them to suit their own needs, which is one of the things that I have been all about as CREPE director. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Adetula. If we have time at the end for a few questions and answers, I'll moderate those as they come in. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat as he's speaking. Okay, we can't hear you. Yeah, there you go. Well,
you're on mute. You need to unmute.
Yeah.
There you go.
So can you see the screen right there? Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Jordan. So today I will present why, what, and how the CREP model can help improve research credibility globally. Also, I will share our experience from the CREP Africa study and recommend how we can engage our colleagues outside the US where CREP remains unpopular. Okay, so I think we are all familiar with CREP. Just to mention, for some of us who are not familiar with the CREP, the Collaborative Replication and Education Project is a model to execute credible and transparent replications while providing on-the-job training. Currently, the initiative is led by Western researchers, including Jordan Wagi. Then I see John as one of the attenders. So it's great. So Jordan Wagi is the current executive director of CREP. Okay. So central to the motive for initiating the CREP, the research that researchers engage in contentious priorities in an attempt to find support for a false hypothesis. And linked to these questionable research practices is the poor replicability rates of psychological science claims. So CREP addresses this issue head-on because it allows the adoption of open science and also the diversification of research questions, settings, research method, and samples, and also helps people to build capacity. Yet, CREP focuses almost entirely on the US and Europe population to some extent. So here comes the CREP Africa. Our motive for the CREP Africa stemmed from the dominance of the US and Europe that most research interest, samples, and authors are from the North American and European populations. The underrepresentation also stems from the underrepresentation of Africans in global research. The African population represents 17% of the world population. Still, the African sample used in studies are published in top-ranked psychological science journals ranges from 0 to 4%. Okay, so linked to the dominance of the US and the underrepresentation of Africans is the generalizability problem. This is the inapplicability of psychological claims beyond the US and Europe. We share some of these thoughts in our communication. Psychology should generalize from not just to Africa. So we initiated the CREP Africa, in which we created and trained colleagues in CREP. And also we conducted and tested the replicability and generalizability of a Western claim in some African countries. I will talk about this study in a minute. Also, we use this CREP to build capacity of African colleagues in replication studies. Okay, to share some of our experience, I will start to say to successfully conduct a replication in a different population or context, such as we did with the CREP Africa study, it is crucial to understand some preparatory work. The key ones here is first, you need to recruit local labs and collaborators. So this is sort of mandatory because you need labs and collaborators to run the study locally. In the CREP Africa study, we recruited 91 collaborators in 15 countries. Also, there is the need for resource assessment. This is not mandatory, but sometimes could be helpful when little is known about the labs or the target populations. The reanalysis of the original findings sort of optional, but can help us compute effect size to determine whether we replicated the original effects. But this is only possible if the original materials, of course, are available. Power analysis is an important one to determine the sample size required to test effects, and also the sample size per sites. And it's also important for sample justification. So in the CREP Africa study, we require at least 100 participants per site for a minimum of 10 sites. So the 100 participants is based on the CREP guidelines on number of participants that you should use for a site. Also, there's an aspect of cultural adaptation and translation of measures. Again, this is optional, but helpful to adapt measures for meaningfulness in the local context, and also translated measure, and also to translate measures in the lingua franca or widely spoken local language at the target sites. So this allows us to reach a wider audience and for sample diversity. In the CREP study, we were able to translate our measure into 5 African languages. Okay, you may want to conduct a study selection. So this depends on whether you want to replicate a previously investigated claim or a novel research question. In the CREP African study, we rely on the PI, and that's me, the PI, and the research team to nominate studies. I will discuss our procedure and criteria for selecting a study for the CREP Africa study in a minute, okay? Also, there is another preparatory work that we should consider is the ethics. So ethics approval, this is obligatory. So for us to consider if the measure or the study is ethically acceptable to the study populations. In the CREP study, we received a local 4 local ethics approval. So last but not the least is the writing a report or preparing a material for the study. So I think this is crucial for any investigation, right? So for the CREP Africa study, we obtained an in-principle acceptance for the registered reports, and we also pre-registered according to the CREP guidelines. Okay, so CREP Africa replicated a previously investigated study, meaning we needed to select a study for replication. And that means we have our criteria for selecting studies. This include if the study is of interest to the local population or researchers, okay? And also if this is relevant to them. And also we consider if a study is feasible, meaning is well documented and is not too complex to replicate in these populations, okay? Also, we consider if a study is ethically acceptable to conduct. Also, if this study is applicable in a way, okay, and if it's adaptable to the local context. We integrated all these criteria into a 3-step study selection procedure. The step 1, we search and nominate articles and papers from journals from the US, Europe, okay, because that's our target. And we shortlisted articles. So we have like 3 articles shortlisted, and the step 3 of this, we went back to we went to collaborators, the local ones, African collaborators, to assess the study, and based on the assessments, we picked a final study to replicate. So the CREP Africa study is a paradigmatic registered replication reports of Rothman and Young study on moral judgment among Africans. So the Rothman and Young proposed the main trace hypothesis. They claim that moral evaluations are more sensitive to the magnitude, frequency, severity of harm-based violations than for purity-based violations. Example of the transgression scenario for the harm-based one is a person punches someone once versus 10 times. So they expected that someone would judge 10 times scenario more wrong than the one-time puncher scenario. For the purity-based one, an example is a person commits incest with a sibling once versus many times. So they predicted that the frequency would not matter in judging these impure acts. Okay, so they presented 32 transgression scenarios with varying combination of harm and base domain versus low and high dosage to participants to judge how wrong these violations are. And they found evidence that people are more sensitive to the severity of harm transgressions than to the severity of purity transgressions. So in the CREP study, our method include a questionnaire comprising of the 32 transgression scenarios, 9 exploratory questions, and 5 demographic questions. We provided local sites with anonymous links to survey the local communities. They surveyed locals via social media and on-site procedure So where this on-site process is where they provided a computer connected to the internet and invited participants to take the survey in person. So I think it's comfortable for them to do that and to just send it out. This is for some sites. We were able to investigate this claim in 5 African countries. Some sites we were unable to continue due to poor infrastructure. Some couldn't finish the pre-registration, and some it was like a poor timing of the projects for them, so they couldn't just work with us. So our final sample includes 783 Africans from 12 sites in Burkina Faso, Kenya, Nigeria, Morocco, and Tanzania. So I would just like to share results of of this study. So based on our preset interpretation that if the confidence interval estimates are less than 0 and less than the meta-analytic estimates, we will interpret this as a replication. Okay, so I present a violin plot here to visualize our findings. So on the y-axis is the average wrongness rating, and on the x-axis are the domain dose treatment conditions. So the red violins here represent the low dosage. The red ones, violins, represent the low dosage, and blue the high dosage. Okay, so for each of these violin are black crossbars. So black crossbar for the original Rothman and Young average wrongness rating, while the dots are our replication average wrongness rating. Sorry, just. Okay, so Africans' average wrongness rating was considerably larger than the original participants' average wrong rating. Also, our African sample was more sensitive to those transgression scenarios than the original US sample. Okay. However, the main differences between the dosage ratings were smaller than the original ones. And currently the stage 2 registered report is under review. Okay. So key lessons learned from the CREP Africa. One, we replicated the claim among Africans with smaller effect size. Second, we noticed that there are other moral issues important to Africans than the one used in the original study. So, for example, disrespect, infidelity are important moral issues to Africans. Also, we adopted a top-down study selection approach. This is similar to the CREP procedure. Okay, so not a nice one for the study. Okay. Also, something not very nice is that a few African labs country participated in this. Like I've mentioned earlier, the infrastructure for this African lab is poor, so they couldn't just go ahead with us. So we have to just allow them to just be. So the positive part here is that 57 African labs and collaborators contributed to the project, and they familiarized themselves with open science, CREP, and big team science. However, we still feel there is a need for capacity building in open science and in CREP. So what next? Okay, what next? Okay, we received our feedback from 16 African professors from Cameroon, Nigeria, Malawi, and Tanzania. So we asked African professors if they think, as an independent researcher, they think they can adopt the CREP model. So 70% were absolutely sure about them adopting the CREP model for their own research, which is great. But when we pose the same question to them about the students adopting that for their own project, we still have like 70% were positive, but not absolutely sure about if they can, if students can adopt it for their own research projects. So we did a follow-up question to that about the feasibility of adopting the CREP model for the students, and they were less optimistic about this. So and some of them indicated that several barriers to adopting CREP model in Africa exist. For example, they talked about the poor infrastructure and resources, more importantly for African students to participate in CREP. Also, they talked about African researcher low familiarity with the CREP model and open science tools, and also the lack of access to CREP materials and tools. So these are the very reasons for the CREP Africa and for our call to action. So what next? Call to action. What can we do to help allow African researchers to work more with the CREP model? So our call to action includes supporting Africans to build capacity and facilities to improve participation. One, developing more manual teaching tools, training materials, okay? And also we are calling on the African professors to adopt a CREP model. Just give it a try. When you're working on your own project, you can just adopt it and give it a try. And there are tools that they can use to able to manage the CREP project. Also, we can encourage by replicating African claims in other population. So I will encourage our researchers from the US, Europe, to collaborate with African researchers in replicating maybe one or two African claims in their own population. I think that will encourage them to want to, know more about the CREP and also about open science. Also, we need to start engaging Africans for improved participation. So this bus stops at the desk of the executive director and people involved in CREP. We can establish active networks of CREPers in African institutions. So we need to engage them. One way is to incentivize them by giving them like small grants, something like $500. It's to make a huge difference if you look at the earnings of African researchers. And also we can work with them to write a grant application to conduct like a CREP study. So that is it from my end. And CREP across borders, the the CREP African experience. You can always feel free to reach out to me on my social media handles. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I am going to stop the recording, and then if we have questions, we do have a few minutes. And people, this is small enough. I think people can feel free to go off mute and ask questions or put them in the chat.
So